The referee's a podcast with Jack and Kelly too. Scottish Championship class, they give us the show. Footy tales from the pitch, controversies they scratch. Every moment they'll itch, no call left to batch.
Here we go again. We're back. The Referee's a podcast. I think episode 8. I checked and I double checked and I triple checked, but it doesn't feel like it's just episode 8. Jack Curry with me as always. How are you doing today?
Oh, Cam, it's a pleasure to be back in the podcast with you. I know what you mean about the episode 8 thing. It feels like we've been away from our listeners and viewers for a long, long time. We're getting close to the end of September here, Cam.
It's mental.
But no, I'm doing very, very well. Glad to be back talking all things Scottish Championship, and my God, we've got tons to talk about, don't we?
That's it. So obviously we'll briefly address the brief gap. I think we missed 2 weeks, didn't we?
2 weeks we missed, yeah.
I was away on holiday at a wedding in Greece. That was the first week. So we didn't do anything for that. We did still do our predictions. We just didn't post them anywhere. You just have to take our word for it. We do have photographic evidence if required. I'm hoping that it's not required, and we'll just take our word for it. And then the stars just didn't align last week, did it?
No.
So we just didn't manage to get round to it and get it, in the pipe working and done. So we're back this week, although at this state it's probably going to be a day late. I could just post it late today, but I think I'll probably just schedule it for the same time slot on the Friday rather than the Thursday. Who knows? That's why this screen here, if you notice, right down at the bottom of the bottom corner, it says time and day not guaranteed. So that's why that's there for these.
I noticed that, Cam, when you made that, and it made me laugh so much because that wee touch of professionalism is exactly what we're about, and being honest with our audience, But I hope you have missed us, listeners and viewers. I hope that you've been itching to get the podcast and you've been refreshing and trying to see, when our latest upload is here. So we're glad to be back, Cam, and we're going to basically just crack on and pick up from where things left off on the Friday night up in Perth, didn't we? Because it was an absolute cracker. Did you manage to catch it on the telly yourself?
I did. I was watching intently. It was one of those things where I turned it on to just have on in the background. I can't remember what I was doing, but I was like, I just have it on in the background and sort of keep an eye on it. And then within sort of like 15, 20 minutes of the game starting, everything that I was doing at the side had stopped and I was just watching. Really good game. Really, really good game.
Brilliant.
Wasn't it?
Yeah, really, really exciting, wasn't it? Like when you seen the way Dunfermline played, they really did kind of sort of have a go at points in the game. You felt, and they kind of took the game to St Johnstone and were the upper hand at parts. But the way St Johnstone got themselves back into it in the second half, it was brilliant. And you see that home crowd there, that's growing and growing week by week up at McDermott Park. Simo Valaraki's building something. But you feel already it's something very special up at St Johnstone this season. It's a win, Cam. You feel as though that bit of a statement coming back against a side in Dunfermline who have spent a bit of money. They've got a few new players in, and they're looking as if they're clicking into gear as well.
Yeah, for sure. One of the games that we did miss was Dunfermline's 5-0 pumping of Arbroath. Now we won't go too far into it, but I think you'll agree that up until that point, Dunfermline, while not having a bad season, we're not having that. A great season. They were winning some, losing some, drawn most. And then all of a sudden come out the blocks away to Arbroath and get a big victory there. So I think coming into this game, it maybe wasn't quite as bleak as it maybe would have been. They've got a big win under their belt, going away to a tough game against St Johnstone. But then obviously they've started. St Johnstone started the better of the two, nearly scored themselves. But Dunfermline came into that game hard as the first half sort of continued on, and like you say, it was a good second half performance from St Johnstone to sort of secure the points there. But I was mighty impressed by Dunfermline, and I think you're spot on. You're saying they're starting to gel together a wee bit now, and start playing the way maybe that Neil Lennon's hoping for. So yeah, I think you're spot on there, and they definitely, I would have said, played better once Zach Rudden left the field. But who am I to say?
Some things haven't changed, listeners, even after a 2-week break, eh? But Rory McLeod, Cam, if we're just going to go back and talk about the goals for a wee second, I mean, it was some strike by McLeod, wasn't it?
Oh,
I mean, on the half volley, it was just so powerful, straightly struck right into the corner, and then I feel as though we obviously Kai Fotheringham, great goal to get the equaliser, and St Johnstone back into the game. But the one I want to talk about now is the two goalkeepers, because Josh McPake obviously scored in what was a good finish from a tight angle. But Mason Munn, who made really good saves throughout the game, really at fault for that goal. And then on the flip side of that, Toby Stewart makes 3 unbelievable saves literally in the last minute to get all 3 points for the Perth Saints. What do you make of the situation with the two goalkeepers in the last 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, for McPake's goal, I don't know what the combination of the keeper and the defenders are doing in that one. Everyone just decides they're going to leave it, and I don't know if they thought they were letting it go out for a corner or whatever, and no one's seen Josh McPake. I think he is in the blind spot of the defender, but there's no excuse for the goalkeeper not at least coming out and making an attempt at the ball, and obviously they've paid dearly for it. And then, like you say, the goalkeeper up the other end has absolutely saved it for them. As the sort of the last few minutes were dwindling on, a few absolute top class saves to keep them in the game. And yeah, it could have easily been 2 each come the end of the game. So yeah, a tale of two goalkeepers, I think, in that one.
It definitely was, Cam, and we've kind of sort of touched upon it there, that, a wee bit like Stewart, showing his worth there at St Johnstone, and, they are just playing so well as such a team. They've had a right mix of results this season where, they've kind of fought hard at home to beat a side like Dunfermline. They fought hard away to win by a goal away against Ross County, but they've also scored goals aplenty in games as well. 5 goals against Thistle in the opening day of the season. So they're kind of showing that when they're playing well, they're going to click into gear and they're going to play really great and score all these goals. But, maybe when a team brings it to them at this stage of the season, Cam, they're showing that they're able to grind out wins.
Yeah.
And that ultimately is why they're yes, Thistle have got 2 games in hand, but ultimately why they're 8 points clear of Wraith Rovers after just 7 games. I mean, that's mental, that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, they're really storming away. And yeah, I think we saw a lot of them sort of winning by a lot early on, and it's obviously started to, like you say, grind for results more recently. I wonder if that's maybe just a symptom of the other teams in the league, scouting them a lot and sort of working out how they're playing and how to shut them down, and especially that Josh McPake threat. He's top goal scorer of the league at the moment, and I think teams are maybe just trying to work out how to take him out of the play a little bit. Maybe it's a case of always forcing him down the left onto his left foot, because I remember from his time at Queen's Park, he's one of the most one-footed players that I've ever seen, which is why I was flabbergasted by one of the commentators who'd said that he's really good in his left foot and he could have ran to the byline and put a cross in with his left. Me all the while just sitting in my chair laughing hysterically at that fact. I don't know if I've ever seen him hit the ball with his left foot, and then there's even that one during the game where he's bearing down towards the left hand side of the goal, and you think you could whack that with your left foot and try to go across keeper, and he tries to hit it with his right foot and ends up turning into like a wee chipped cross because he hits it so awkwardly trying to hit it with his right foot. So yeah, no, I think it's teams are just working out how to shut them down a wee bit better. So is what it is. Fingers crossed. We can maybe still try and grind out something against them when we play them coming up, but it's still a super scary prospect to play that St Johnstone team at the moment. Like you say, storming away up at the top there, and it looks almost at the moment that they could potentially have already won the league in September,
Yeah, it's crazy, Cam, especially when we'll go on to it, the stark contrast to Ross County coming down from the Premiership. Things are almost just getting bad to worse for them, which is almost unthinkable since Tony Dock came in, but we'll go on to that in a wee bit. Final word I want to kind of bring up here, Cam, on St Johnstone. Because we've spoken about Dunfermline's fans quite a lot on this podcast over the last year or so, and praising, home and away, they are one of the most sizable fan bases in the league. But we're seeing a team like St Johnstone here, pulling in a crowd of 6,232. I remember seeing over the years some Premiership games, St Johnstone, wouldn't get anything close to that.
Yeah.
So I think there has to be a word just now for the St Johnstone fans that are really, really buying into what's going on at McDermott Park, and you definitely got to take your hat off to them.
100%, definitely. We talk about the attendance quite a lot, but it's so important, teams in our division. Now, I don't know, it doesn't break it up on here, there was 6,200 fans. I don't know how many of them were travelling Dunfermline fans, because as we know, and as you literally just mentioned, they do get supported fantastically. But you've got to imagine, at least half, probably more than half, is going to be home fans there. 3,000-4,000 fans there, at least, I would have said. So, brilliant to see these games in the Championship supported so heavily. It's just sort of really what needs to happen for, clubs in our division. It's such a struggle. Clubs in any division, or even, the lower half of the top division, money in Scottish football is not great, obviously, and it's a lot of teams struggling and financially needing a wee bit of help. So to see that many fans through the gates, I'm sure they'll be pleased at that as well. Not to mention the fact that obviously that means that they're being better supported than there's more people wearing the shirts and scarves, and it's a lot of stuff that comes with it. So fit through the door, that's what they need. So fair play, and obviously they've sent at least their side of the fans home happy anyway.
Absolutely. So if you're new to this podcast and Johnson fans, let us know in the comments or send us a wee message in how you're enjoying life to Championship football, and we'll certainly read some of your comments out next week, Cam. But it's time to move on from St Johnstone for now. We'll be back to talk about them in a wee bit later on in the podcast, as we will Dunfermline. But Airdrie had their first of two home games in the space of 3 or 4 days.
They did.
As they were taking on Barry Robson's high-flying Wraith Rovers. Turned out, though, to be a massive disappointment, though, Cam. Nothing each down at the Excelsior. What's your kind of sort of thoughts on that? It definitely feels like it's a 2 points dropped for Wraith rather than it is Airdrie, despite Airdrie being the home team.
Yeah. I mean, despite the fact that sort of as the season went on last year, Airdrie looked like they were coming right into it, and maybe things were starting to click over there, and they were saved by Hamilton's situation. So I was thinking coming into this season, Airdrie were going to be pretty solid, pretty good, but they're not doing so well. I don't really know what it is. Obviously McCabe's gone, but I think they were still looked to be struggling, even though he did leave early. Two games into the season, 3 games into the season.
2 games, I think. Yeah.
They were obviously not doing. They were struggling a bit in those games, but they've not really come out very hot to the start of this season. So I think you're right there in saying Wraith Rovers have dropped a couple of points in that game. You've got to imagine the form that they've been in, and they've got a really good team. I don't know if you knew, so they'll be certainly wondering why they've not managed to score in that game. I've not seen it, I wasn't there, but looking at the stats, it's exactly 50-50 possession, 9 shots to 9 shots, a wee bit more so on target for Wraith Rovers, but it does just look like there was 2 separate teams of people playing football on the same pitch at that game there. So not a great one, I would have to have thought, for the fans who've paid the money and made the travel to the stadium to watch that one. But that happens sometimes in football, and you never know, it might have been the best 0-0 you've ever seen in your life. I just wouldn't put any money on it.
No, it's just something that never really gets you out of bed in the morning. It's not a 0-0.
No.
If that's what you're told you're going to. But, fair play to everybody that was there. But, we've kind of sort of spoken a wee bit there about sort of Wraith Rovers and them, the fact that they're going to be disappointed. But Airdrie fans, although a good point at home against Wraith, they will be disappointed. 7 games in to the season, no win, 3 draws, 4 losses. They are rock bottom of the table, level with Ross County. What do you make of Airdrie's start? Is it really just what we should almost expect from where their squad's at and where the managerial position was at, and getting somebody new in and it's not his team, or should we be expecting a bit better from this Airdrie team?
Well, again, obviously I was just saying it based on the way they finished last year and moving through into this season, I thought they were going to be at the level that they finished last season, but they really aren't. Now, don't know. We still don't really know why McCabe left. I know it's family and young family and time for them and stuff, and I get that it takes up a lot of time being a manager, but it still feels weird that he'd left after 2 games into the season. He knew, presumably during the summer, that he had a young family or was about to have a young family. And I just feel like there's something else there. There's maybe something behind the scenes that's forced him out, or there's problems there. Who knows? But there's something I miss. There's something I miss. There has to be. And whether that's also taking a toll on the playing squad and why they're having such a miserable start, I suppose we're not really best placed to know that, or really know anyone who's going to know that. We can only sort of sit here and speculate. But yeah, there's something stinky in Airdrie, and it's not the Airdrieonians.
Yeah. But the thing that interested me, Cam, and I never really like to surmise too much at the time when things are going on, because as you said, you don't know, and sometimes it's better just to wait and see how things play out.
Yeah.
And kind of see it, bite your tongue and stuff. But one of the things that just interested me, and this could be absolutely nothing, this could have been in the works, and it was McCabe's thing that was signed off before he was even in the door.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure it was the day after McCabe left the club, or it was even the same day, or anybody listening can tell me I'm wrong on this, but I'm sure Charlie Telfer re-signed for the club the day after
right.
McCabe left, and then obviously Danny Lennon get brought in and stuff like that. And I was just kind of more thinking, like, could it have been a type of thing where McCabe's wanted to try and bring a certain player, been told that the budget's not there, the money's not there, and then, someone behind the scenes is went and signed someone, and he's like, well, hold on a second, I got rid of him in the summer, I don't want him. And there's going to be, differences that they can't come back from. I mean, whether that's just a lot of rubbish, I don't know, but that's what happens when you don't really know. And as you said, you kind of see family issues, but as you said, you explained all the reasons, Cam, as to why that just doesn't sit right. So it's an interesting one. Certainly interesting.
I know. And with it being the Scottish Championship, it's not like there's a sea of reporters flooding Rhys McCabe on the street, or even that bothered about it. There was the statement from the club, there's a statement from Rhys McCabe, and that's sort of that. And no one's really that bothered, so it just leads to everyone else talking. Obviously, we had the thought that he was going to be the county manager, but that job came and went. And then you asked me about who I thought the assistant was, and I thought it must have been McCabe before my second guess being Cam Davidson. Weird one, and yeah, it's obviously affecting them so far. Like you say, rock bottom, not ideal. They will be having flashbacks from last year, and hoping that it doesn't go on. We'll obviously come on to later how the fact that it is still going on, but before that, we've got some other games from Saturday to talk about. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of to Wraith Rovers and Airdrie? I know we talked quite highly of Wraith Rovers in recent times, and talked quite lowly of Airdrie at fair length right there. So I'm all out on these two.
Happy to leave it there and park it all for next week.
Spot on. So next up, Arbroath against Greenock Morton, 1 each. Down Arbroath ways, down by the sea. What do you think of the matchup between those two teams? How they've started off this season, Arbroath against Morton? I
mean, Arbroath, you just need to say they're doing brilliantly. Yep. I think when you kind of look at where they're sitting third in the league, after 7 games played, they've won more than they've lost.
The ultimate surprise package, isn't it?
They are, and it's absolutely fantastic. Obviously the game against Morton was a 1 each draw at home, and I think ironically that both teams maybe would feel disappointed from that. That they've not came away. Morton still searching for their first win of the season. They're obviously just becoming the draw specialists yet again. 6 draws from their opening 7 games, with the other one coming as a defeat. I mean, they've only scored 5, the joint lowest in the league. So. Yeah, there's a few teams, Cam. It's so interesting. I think, we spoke about this before a couple of the teams got victories, but you look at the bottom half of the table, you've got Ayr, Queen's Park, Morton, Ross County and Airdrie. who have got 2 wins between them.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about, what's that, 33 games played, between them all, and there's 2 wins.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely crazy. So Morton, they'll both be disappointed, but when you look at our both starts of the season, Cam, they've been excellent.
It's crazy. Yeah, no one's expected it, but I was just noticing and laughing at it there that they're third place, 11 points, -4 goal difference, the third worst in the league. Third best points, third worst goal difference. Obviously, all down to that 5-0 thumping from Dunfermline they received. But no, it was just a funny wee bit there. But no, what a start. Obviously, Morton's always a tough game, isn't it? It's like you said there, this year and last year and every other year, draw specialists. If you want to grind out a result, have Morton. Definitely a tough place to go though, down to Arbroath. So fair play to them going down there, getting the goal and holding off till the whistle goes at the end, and bring a point home with you. But yeah, obviously, I think they'd have been looking at the fact that Arbroath lost 5-0 at home to Dunfermline and went, maybe it's not so bad to go there and play. But it's not been potentially the most exciting game to go and watch. But unfortunately, sorry Morton fans, it does seem like that's just something you guys would be used to by now.
Yeah, which it must be quite brutal at times, eh? But it's kind of like, what would you take? Exciting football, but you're going to get beat more at times, and then risk reward and it. But Diggy does do a solid job down there in Greenock.
Obviously, so our start of the season we lost. No, we drew, and then we lost, and then we drew, and we drew, and we drew, and those draws were pretty it was that way where you're watching the games and you're like it doesn't even feel like you're going to score, it doesn't even feel like you're really going to get anytime you get near the opposition box, it's like everyone forgets how to football, and it's like there's a simple pass there that's going to progress play. No, I'm going to put my foot on it and I'm going to turn around and I'm going to play it back the way. And I know that's what football's like now. It's about control and possession and reworking it round to the other side and stuff, but I always feel like, sorry, we're talking about another one. I've moved on to Queen's Park very briefly, but it's like, it just slowly passes it from one side to the other. It's not like when you watch the English Premier League and a player has it on the right hand side of the field and they just whack their foot at it, and all of a sudden it's fully across to the other side of the pitch and someone's whacking it out of the air perfectly, and the ball's switched. In our league, it's so slow moving from side to side that makes it just completely pointless almost at times, and I feel like that's what must have happened in these sorts of games where it just sort of boils out and it's a fairly dull draw. It's just right, okay, I can't go forwards, I'm going to stop, go backwards and slowly pass it to the other side. But it's a weird league to watch for that sort of thing. It's like they try and take example from elsewhere and just can't quite put it to paper.
That's why I love though watching the St Johnstone Dunfermline game, because it was just action. It was just goal. It was two teams that were really trying just to win the game, and that's what you just love. Football back to the basics. It's literally a team of 11 guys that just love playing the game and they're just going for it to win. And that's kind of what I get from watching this Thistle team. Just now is there's that installation inside you just to want to win. But we'll go on to Thistle, I suppose, in a wee bit. But you spoke about Queen's Park there, Cam. Let's segue nicely into Queen's Park, because what a win. What a win. You've kept the misery for Ross County going. Josh Fowler back in the score sheet, getting a double. Declan Gallagher with a straight red card, just conceded a penalty. I mean, the game seemed to have everything about it. One thing I'll say before I let you go and talk, we did speak through the week, and I think everybody will be in agreement, and anybody who watches Queen's Park will agree that your season really hinges on the man Fowler up front. And how good he'll play, how consistent he'll be, and if he's that consistent and he scored 10, 15 goals by January, it's whether you're going to keep him.
Well, exactly. Yeah, he's 100% not going to be a Queen's Park player next year, but on that point, there's probably most of our squad that won't be Queen's Park players next year due to the impending financial disaster that's on its way. So he's certainly not going to be here next year either way. It's, like you say, whether we can actually even keep him past January. You never know. You never know. I always like to think that when you sign a player, you're at minimum going to get 12 months out of him. So fingers crossed, because you're right. He's bringing it all together at the moment, and managing to get goals. It's kind of like Rory Payton in that year where we struggled so hard all year long, but the only reason we finished in, I think, again, 8th place on the last day of the season was that Rory Payton had scored like 22 or 23 league goals or something mental like that. So I think it'll be something along those lines. But I think the team are maybe playing a little bit better football as well in sort of recent weeks. Passing the ball a wee bit better and looking. Again, I think it's the same with a lot of teams in our league, especially in recent years, where there's usually been quite a lot of change in the off season, so it's a lot of new players and young guys coming through. They're all trying to learn how to play together, and it does take a wee bit of time for it to sort of click. I think we've been looking fairly decent defensively of late, but we were struggling to get the goals in. So to see that man firing a double in this game, I think it's 9 goals in 10 games, all competitions so far for the man. So yeah, brilliant to see him get the 2 goals there and get the 3 points, and like you say, piling a wee bit of extra heat on Ross County, who've lost 2-1 at home again. They obviously lost 2-1 at home to Arbroath, I think, just the weekend before as well, and then I think they've lost 3-1 up there to you lot twice as well. Am I right?
Yeah, once in the cup, once in the league. I mean, Ross County's form is just been embarrassing, if we're being honest. It's absolutely atrocious when you see the squad of players that they've got, the money that they've been spending, and just how much they continually try and keep pumping money, trying to find solutions. As we spoke about earlier, Cam, we didn't speak in the podcast about the assigning of Callum Davidson as an assistant manager. I don't think on
no,
this
you're
podcast,
right, we didn't.
When you look at the fact that I'm sure they've got John Robertson as it there as well, so they've effectively got 3 guys who have been managers at points, all in the kind of managerial roles. We know Tony Dock's not going to come in the cheap, so they're spending money. I think was it just yesterday or even maybe today they've signed Trevor Carson on loan from Dundee.
Right.
More money being spent trying to address what they feel is perhaps a goalkeeping issue. Experienced players like Declan Gallagher, who will be on a good wage, aren't performing. Ross Docherty's been shocking. Jay Henderson's not lived up to the heights of what we've seen him on air. Ronan Hale, who's an international player, has been shocking.
Yeah.
So, although, you say Hale's get some goals, his penalties here and there, I think he got a double in one game. It's not good enough still, for the level that you should expect out of a Ross County player from what I've seen of him anyway.
Definitely.
Great win for Queen's Park, but I don't know where Ross County go from here, Cam.
No,
I just don't.
For sure.
I mean, we thought Don Cowie was the problem. I was so, I was lambasting Cowie.
You were
on this podcast week after week. But the more the weeks now go on that he's not here, the more that was Cowie ever the problem? That's what you now need to begin to ask yourself.
Based on his statement when he resigned, no, maybe not. He's like, I want to resign so the club can, move on and get something, and it's going to be for the goodness of the club and all that stuff. Obviously, it's not been, like you say. They've struggled just as much, if not more. Now, going into this game, I was fully expecting, and we've definitely talked about this before, that Queen's Park are usually bad form breakers. You could not win a game for 20 games and play against Queen's Park and win nicely. It just seems to be our little bit of bad luck. But we broke that curse with this win. I was fully expecting, we're going to be the fucking clowns who lose to Ross County. Fuck's sake, we're going to go up there and we're going to get pummeled. And we weren't. We went up there and we actually managed to get a victory. Don't get me wrong, they got the red card in the 60th minute or so. Taken down. Matty Shields was playing a more advanced left wing role in the game. I think he got the assist for Fowlers first, and then he got fouled to get the red card. Just managed to sneak in there ahead of the defender and you know, he's been taken out, and I think he was adjudged to being the last man. So that was that. You know, he was away, so it was fair enough. And then managing to just capitalise on it late and get our first 3 points of the season. And you know, still a game to play over the teams around us. The only other team is yourself with 2 games, and Ayr, who's presumably the other team that you play. So
that is indeed.
if we can get a victory against your lot, which we'll come on to, then obviously we'll be sitting pretty in 10 points, you know. And if we beat you 4 or 5-0, then we'll have a really good goal difference too.
Well, that's definitely not going to happen, so I wouldn't get too ahead of yourself there, Camboy. But
there's another game in its way first, but yes, it will.
Yeah. But I was going to ask you though, right? You've kind of half answered the question there, but we'll get on to Ayr United shortly. But we've criticised Ayr a lot this season for their start, and rightly so, because of how they've spent money, just like Ross County, and the fact that they've been a disappointment. You and Ayr have got the exact same, you know, stats: one win, 4 draws, 1 loss. How do you analyse Queen's Park start to the season based on what you would expect, just as a whole, looking at the league table just now?
Well, I think at the moment, looking at the league table, Queen's Park are in the position that I predicted them to be come the end of the season. I'm sure I predicted them for 7th. But I had Ayr predicted for 2nd. Based on the season that they've had, based on the way it seemed like Scott Brown was sort of getting it to work towards the end of last season and starting to find a way to win games that he'd maybe been drawing earlier on in the season and such, and then to go off in the summer and make the signings that they did, and you know, the quality at hand that they have at Ayr United, you certainly have to be now pointing fingers at Scott Brown and wondering, we've been saying it for ages already, but is he not cut out for this?
Well, it's interesting. Maybe this is the time to sort of then talk about Ayr, because I'm fully in agreement with you.
Yeah.
But he then goes and follows that all up. You know, before the game we're going to talk about now, what were the 5 games in, no wins.
Yeah.
But he did go and get a win away to Dunfermline. You know, we were bigging Dunfermline up earlier on in the episode, and quite rightly so, talking about their 5-0 win away to Arbroath and their good performance and defeat against St Johnstone. But it was back to the Dunfermline of old that felt on Tuesday night, you know, conceding an early goal, didn't look to ever get themselves back into it. And when you seen Chillicoe Mullen getting a second yellow card just at the start of the second half, it was game over. But how much of a crucial win was that for Scott Brown, you know, to potentially have kept his job even?
I don't know. Obviously, yes, they got the 3 points in that, and you know, like you say, as soon as they got that red card just coming out of the second half, that was sort of that, you know, whatever Neil Lennon had said at halftime was now out the window, and any sort of potential plan that they talked about throughout halftime to get back into the game was gone, sort of thing. So it's a hard one to look at, and I think looking at it in isolation, no. Potentially though, looking at it in the scheme of things, 5 games down the line, who knows? If this starts a run of winning, then yeah, it's saved his job. If he goes back to not winning, then I think it will again come back to, well, he's only had 1 win. You know, he should have had way more wins. So I don't think we can go so far as to say that yet. If this is a turnaround of form, then yeah, we'll maybe open that up. But at the moment, I think we'll no. You know, I think if anything, it has to be Scott Brown being the issue. But you know, it's not our decision to make, is it? That's the people in charge at Ayr to sort of come to that conclusion. I don't know if he's just allowed maybe a bit of extra leeway and slack because of who he is and the sort of reputation he has. But you know, the fans will at some point decide they've had enough. It's just whether that's sooner or later, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I would be in agreement with you as well. And I think you've kind of touched on something there that we've spoke about in the past as well, and it's about Scott Brown and changing things. You know, one thing that caught my eye straight away, Cam, there, looking at the team that he started against Dunfermline, there was no effectively no striker in the team.
Yeah.
Like, there was no Anton Dowd, who's now back from injury, starting. There was no George Oakley starting, and there was no Curtis Main starting. it was Jamie Murphy here and Walker, it says up front, and neither of them are natural strikers. So it was a really, really interesting to see. As we know, Scott Brown basically changes everything game by game. This time he tried something totally different after we spoke about a couple of weeks ago where he lambasted both Oakley and Main for their performances up front in a game and said, what he said, and just do you feel as though, he'll maybe stick with this Cam, with this almost, false nine or no strikers up front or whatever it is he's trying here? Or do you just think he's going to just revert back and, he could be playing, he's played 5-3-2 here, could he play a 4-1-4-1 or something the next game?
I don't know. I don't know if he thinks all these changes are like, taking everyone by surprise. If I do a formation in a team that I've never done before, that will catch them by surprise. And you're like, well, I mean, yeah, you're right, it will. But it will also catch your team by surprise and everyone else. Yeah. It's not been working for him so far, but this does sort of... We've been saying it for that long now that it seems like this is just the way he manages it. So it's just a case of, I feel like playing 4-4-2 today. Right, okay. Yeah. What players? Do I want any strikers in my 4-4-2? Nah, I don't fancy that. What goalkeeper are we playing today? No, we've got the one goalkeeper this year. It's just every other position we're changing every day. Okay, cool. Right. It's just strange. It's strange.
It's almost like last season, right, when we were like saying, Scott Brown, like, you've got a good team and you're playing quite well. Just stop changing your goalkeeper, right? And things might work for you. And he's taken that too literally, right? Where he thinks if he just keeps Mitchell in goals every week, but changes everything else, that's what people meant. When he's gone too far.
You're onto something there. You're onto something there. Or maybe it is just the fact that changes is his management style. So he's like, well, if I can't change the keeper, then I need to change everybody else. I need to change something. I'm a changer. I need to change. Maybe his hair transplant is starting to grow into his brain and like tickle his brain and make it all fucked.
Did they have did they have a hair transplant? It wasn't just the fact they shaved his head his whole career. He did have a hair transplant. Is that right?
I'm certain. I've never looked into it, but yes, 100%. 100%.
I did think that, but I was also not sure if it was like, was it Frankie the Bookie in Still Game, coming in to work every morning shaving his baldy butt off.
I heard Terry Crews is not a bald man. Terry Crews shaves his head.
There you go. I would just believe that he was a bald man.
Yeah, 100%. He's like one of the most famous bald men. He's a shaver.
Yeah, there you go. So Scott Brown, anybody who knows Scott Brown's hair routine, please do let us know, because we're extremely interested here.
But we can the internet at our fingers.
We'll Google. You can Google.
But just keep going. Keep Phil.
What full time? But what I was going to say is, for all we've been, having a laugh and dishing out a bit of jokes here about Scott Brown, they came away with the win. They're first of the season, and it'll be interesting now with Ayr United playing Airdrie at home this weekend, and we're going to now talk about Airdrie in a wee second. But they're back at home, back in front of the home fans. This is where they need to start turning 1-1 into 2 into 3, and getting a run together, because otherwise the pressure's just going to keep mounting on them.
You're right. But just very briefly, I wasn't right. He did just grow his hair.
I thought that. I don't know why. Something told me. I was like, he's just.
I don't know if I've just went, he's a bald person and he's out of the spotlight for years, and he comes back and he's got all this hair, and you're like, aye, right.
Yeah.
Aye, right.
Yeah, no, Scott Brown has hair. Who knew?
Ah, you can shave it.
Maybe that's what he's missing.
Maybe that's what he's missing. Yeah, that's what he's missing. His head's too hot. He gets angry and his head gets too hot because of all that hair. Yeah. He got used to not having hair, and then when he got hair, it's like, oh, my head is roasting.
He doesn't need a hat, apparently. So.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. I know that. But yeah, sorry, we were talking about Airdrie against St Johnstone.
Yeah, well, the fact that exactly. So they've got Airdrie at home. Airdrie. We spoke about them drawing earlier on. What was it earlier on in the episode when they drew against Wraith at home?
Yeah.
They were at home again against St Johnstone, but St Johnstone grinded out that one again. 2 goals up fairly early. Airdrie getting themselves back into it. But obviously St Johnstone held on for the win. Just how important again. It's almost a carbon copy of the chat from earlier, but just St Johnstone's ability to grind out these types of victories.
Yeah. No, definitely. We obviously touched on both of these teams. Airdrie nearly doing enough there, getting a goal back in the 74th minute. I think probably at that point they're thinking, oh, we can maybe get one back. Obviously, it's hard to say without being at the game and seeing how it went. I don't know if that goal was against the run of play or that was Airdrie coming back into it, or it's just been a freak goal of some kind or a corner or whatever. But, looking at it on the face of it, you think, things have gone slightly differently and they may be telling a different story. But no, like you mentioned, St Johnstone have just ground out another victory by 1 goal, just seeing the game out. Yes, both teams got a red card, and both teams in both games on Tuesday got a red card, which is obviously something quite pleasing for me that St Johnstone got a wee red card there with our game coming up, but I'm sure they have plenty of quality in their team to cover, and it not be too big a problem for them. But yeah, what more can you say about St Johnstone? It's the reason they're top of the league by so many points at the moment. But yes, they're now obviously one of 4 teams who've played a midweek game. So maybe they'll start to think that postponing that game earlier in the season is maybe going to come back to haunt them now that they're going to have to play 3 games over the course of the week, So we'll see if that comes back to bite them on Saturday, fingers crossed. But yeah, another good 3 points for them.
Yeah, it definitely was. When you look at that performance on the road, and then especially Airdrie getting the goal, 15 minutes from time, they've been heaping the pressure on, and you can obviously see by the fact that when Diabate and Reid got sent off, Holt get booked, Strap get booked as well, so there was obviously a bit of commotion right at the end there, and passion from both teams to try and get something out of the game. So it's one of those ones where, again, we've kind of sort of said it, disappointment for Airdrie. They're still settling in under Danny Lennon, but at the same time, I almost don't want to be too harsh on Airdrie either, because the draw against Wraith was solid. They played the best team in the league at home. They only lost by a goal, which, it's not being disgraced. They aren't leaking goals at an alarming rate, and, they do have a goal in them. So you just feel as though Airdrie, they are only a couple of wins away from the picture being totally different, but they just need something quickly to get their season underway, and whether that's going to come at Ayr away this weekend, Cam, I'm just not so sure.
Yeah. Despite Ayr's form, you still look at that fixture and you think, oh well, Ayr's got that, don't they? Because the quality of players that they have there. It's whether they can sort of piece it all together and get it worked out. But yeah, on the face of it, I think Airdrie have got a tough game ahead of them on Saturday. I think Ayr will be looking for their second victory of the season there. Which, yeah, I think it's pretty hard to look past. If I was a betting man, I think my money would be going on Ayr in that one.
Yeah, I'd be the same, Cam. I'd be the same. And let's segue, I suppose, into the fixtures. And I do fancy Ayr because we've kind of said it already. If they're looking to get the pressure off, if they are looking to kickstart their season, look to climb up into the playoff positions, it's going to need to be sooner rather than later.
For sure.
Before we know it, we're getting into October, and with the first quarter of the season already been and gone. So I think these games coming up for teams are important, just to establish, how momentum's going to go for them, what type of season we're going to have, because too often, we've seen with Wraith Rovers last season, they made a good run in the end, but it wasn't quite enough. A slow start can really catch out in this league.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. The points become so valuable so quickly. I think as teams get belief, all of a sudden it's the thing that we say all the time is any team can beat any other team, but that becomes way more prevalent as the season goes on, and teams are a bit more desperate for points. It makes it much more attainable all of a sudden. So I think you struggle at the start. It's going to be a tough one for you, which is obviously going to be Ross County's issue so far, but Airdrie's obviously fairly used to this position that they're in as of recent times, so if anyone knows how to sort it out, it may very well be Airdrie. So I think you're spot on. They'll be hoping for something to happen soon, and then obviously the Ayr United situation, it's just going to be for Scott Brown. He'll be desperately wanting something soon to show that they've not wasted a whole load of money on him and his way of playing football.
No, definitely. It's going to be really, really interesting. There's so much of the season still to be played, as we've said, but so much adapting for teams to do. Because we did see a lot of upheaval and a lot of changes in people's squads, didn't we, across the summer? And
100%.
I think some teams have been fine with that, and some teams are integrating quite quickly, but it does naturally take a lot of time.
It does, yeah, definitely. So I will see how that goes. That's obviously our first game on Saturday there. Next up, it's your lot away to Dunfermline. Take us away on your thoughts for the game at the weekend.
Well, obviously we've kind of glossed over it, which I'm absolutely fine with, but we got horsed off of Celtic 4-0
at
home in the cup. It's not championship. Obviously it featured ourselves. I was there. It was one of those games that it wasn't. You're always coming away disappointed, bitterly with a defeat. But I tried to not get too down about it, considering the class of player in the opposition team. So it's one of those ones where you think 4-0 at home, massive disappointment. Where the positives to take, absolutely. There were, and I hope it will be a good learning experience for what is a pretty young squad we've got this season, and a young manager at the helm as well. And we're able to take positives away and be able to build on it. And I don't know if you saw, Cam, Firhill had a great crowd there.
Definitely,
we had the tifo at the start of the game as well. It was just a brilliant atmosphere. So hopefully that's kind of encapsulated the minds of maybe the next sort of generation of young Thistle fans as well. So absolutely brilliant game to be at. And now, as we've spoke about, Cam, 2 games in hand for Thistle in the league, which unbelievably could see us sitting just 3 points behind St Johnstone in second place, which just seems almost mental to say, in a sense, from where my expectations were at this season. But obviously this game on Saturday isn't one of those, and don't want to get too ahead of myself. It will be a difficult game against Dunfermline. A Dunfermline side that will be looking to bounce back from 2 defeats in a row after the thumping against Arbroath. It's a game for Dunfermline where if they win, they overtake us in the league into a guaranteed playoff position. Whereas if we beat them, it's a kind of different reach for them. Kind of comparing themselves against how much of a good season they're going to have compared to us. So I'm expecting a very tough game for Thistle up at East End Park on Saturday, and I'm expecting it to be quite close in terms of how it's going to play out.
What are your thoughts about coming up against the all-star striker Zach Rudden?
Well, against Arbroath, when I seen the highlights, I must say Zach Rudden looked very well. Obviously, I've seen him play for Thistle, and I've seen him play for Queen's Park as well. And he's a bit of an enigma of a player at times. He can play well, but so often he does feel as though he's got an air of unluckiness about him at times as well.
Definitely.
Trips over the ball or makes a good run, but it goes behind him. Or
I don't know if it's unluckiness as much as he's just like a clumsy player. And I think he's maybe not got the greatest game sense. Like, I feel like my thing with him that I always said when he played for us is that I just felt like he was always in the wrong position. It's like he either misread the game as to where it was going, or like a literal miscommunication with somebody, or he just, like I say, just couldn't sense what was happening, and he was just, he's over there, but all the other plays sort of happening over there, and he's like, he does a lot of running and he does a lot of work.
Yeah.
He's always done a lot of work and a lot of pressing down, and he runs the whole game. So he always busts a gut for the team, but I just felt like a lot of it came without payoff. See, if he was like a really good striker, he could have scored 40 goals last year, I would have said.
Yeah.
Like there was so many. We kept on saying that it's the shots that he has to think about that he misses, but if he just went and like whacked his foot at it, more often than not, he would score like some sort of like really nice goal. You know, there's like a good few where he just sort of picks the ball, turns and hits it, and it goes in. You're like, why don't you just do that all the time? And then instead he fannies about and, you know, blasts it wide from 5 yards, and you're like, fuck's sake.
Well, one thing I noticed, because I was looking at Dunfermline's team there, because obviously there has been, you know, a couple of stars sort of shining now. Andy Todd in particular has had a really good start to the season, and I think the boy that they've picked up from Sheffield United, Caceres, looks as if he's got some talent there as well. He did. But then I just noticed there, Rudden wasn't in the squad at all for the game against Ayr United.
So he did come off injured in the televised game, the St Johnstone game. Because it was the first half he came off, I'm sure. Like I say, they did.
So he might be out.
So he was certainly, he's obviously maybe just not rest for that game, but don't worry, I'm sure he'll be back to pay you a visit, whether it's off the bench or not. He might be really good off the bench. We wouldn't know because we didn't have any other strikers to play, so he was never on the bench.
Well, that was his issue at Hughes. His issue at Hughes was he used to play him as a lone striker.
Well, Dunfermline were playing him as a lone striker. I'm sure they were.
I'm not sure, but they might be. But what I was going to say was the best I've seen him play was in a front two.
Yeah.
Because Graham stood in the box and Rudden done all the running, and it worked.
We always said that he needed a partner, but he was our only striker. You know, we had some youth players who would sometimes play that way, but you know, he knew that it didn't matter even if he played badly, because he was going to remain on the pitch, because who else is going to come on, sort of thing. And I don't know if that played an impact or played a part, but he does look like, when I was watching him in the game, he did look like there's like a weight lifted off of him. You know, not so much of the world riding on his shoulders, but I think that's enough of Dunfermline and Zach Rudden. I wish you luck for your game on Saturday. Although obviously a draw, if every other team just drew every game and we won all the rest of our games, then that would make me happy. So if you want to get a draw, that's ideal. But
and perfectly talking about draws, Morton.
Yes, Morton against Ross County, of all people.
I can see this being a draw, weirdly enough.
Yeah, or a Ross County defeat. Martin don't win many, but Ross County seem to lose a lot.
I don't know how long I can keep thinking Ross County have got a good team for before, as you said, I start assuming that they're just going to lose.
I know, it's weird. It's really weird. It's like you touched on earlier. They're one of the two teams that have come down, and one of those teams is absolutely demolishing the league, and the other team looks like one of the worst teams in the league. You know, it's crazy, and they're not going to have an easy time of it going down to the Capello.
No, definitely not. And you think the longer Morton go without their first win of the season, you know, the more hungry they're going to get for that as well. And, you know, what a way it would be for Morton to pick up the first win of the season at home to Ross County. Keep Ross County at least 4 points stranded down at the bottom. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what will happen for the Staggies on Saturday when they go down to Greenock. And then yourself, Cam, you're playing high-flying St Johnstone at home. What's your expectations? Because you did just beat Ross County away. Is there a bit of positivity going into this now, or are you still feeling the worst?
There's one thing that I certainly like that I touched on earlier, and that's the fact that St Johnstone have played through the week. They've played a Tuesday night because they had their game postponed earlier in the season. So, thanks to Dunfermline, we will maybe have a tired St Johnstone there to play against us. So, I don't know. It's a tough one. Obviously, St Johnstone are looking really, really good. They've not lost at all yet. Sod's Law, is that Josh McPake is going to come back and score against us. we have horrible luck with ex-players. Dom Thomas, we kept quiet, thankfully, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a really tough game.
And the return of Callum Davidson to the south side of Glasgow as well.
Yeah, that too. So I don't know. I don't think too many teams are going into their games against St Johnstone at the moment thinking, yeah, this is going to be a great game. We're going to have a really good go at it. I think it's going to be a lot of fear. But if Josh Fowler can get a goal or two and the rest of the team plays well and keeps a fairly solid defence, then there's no reason that you can't beat the St Johnstone team. It's very unlikely that they're going to go unbeaten all season and they're going to have to lose at some point. So, yeah, I think as long as the boys on the park keep that little bit of belief that these aren't, they've not been beaten yet, but they're not unbeatable, and they maybe go out and do it, and maybe some tired St Johnstone legs, stranger things have happened. I think it's going to be a tough game, though. And I think it's supposed to be wet. And I don't know if you know about Lesser Hampden, but you get quite wet when it's wet in Lesser Hampden. So, yeah, I have a funny feeling it's going to be just a miserable wet experience watching some fairly miserable football, but you never know. Fingers crossed, I'll be there, I'll be shouting. Maybe that'll be enough.
I think the point you made there, though, is a good one, Cam. St Johnstone, they won't go the whole season unbeaten. I just don't see that happening at all. There's going to be slip-ups, but you can't even say they'll definitely win the league at this stage, although they've certainly put themselves in such a commanding position early.
Yeah.
So, you never know. They clearly will be favourites going into this game, as they will now pretty much all games for the rest of the season. But, you've got a chance at home. I think you need to build on that win away to Ross County and try and drag yourselves away from them in energy a wee bit, just to give the fans a wee bit of breathing space and to be able to kind of enjoy life in the Championship again. So certainly going to be an interesting one there, Cam, and it'll be interesting to see what happens. And then we go on to a game for me where I've been thinking about just in the back of my mind here. It's an intriguing one. At Starks Park, both sides sitting there on the same amount of points, 3 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. Of course, we're talking about Wraith Rovers against Arbroath. We spoke about it earlier on in the episode about the start that Arbroath had. Both teams though have kind of sort of tripped up ever so slightly, a loss and a draw in their last games. Is this where we see Arbroath start to tumble down the table a wee bit here, or are we not giving them enough credit and we should really be expecting them to go and give Wraith Rovers a right good game and possibly come away with a result on Saturday?
It's a tough one, because I suppose the thing that we've got to continue to remember is Arbroath are a part-time team, the only part-time team in the league. So, yes, you've got to imagine that at some point they are going to tail off just due to the fact that they're not training as much as all the other teams. These guys, for the most part, presumably all, if not the most of them, are going out and working as well. And it's a tough gig, going in and working a job and then also playing football in the evenings at the weekends, and it's going to be tough for them over the course of the season. Whether that turning point is happening now or whether this is just a bit of a blip, I think either way they're going to have a tough game going in and playing away at Wraith Rovers. You obviously have mentioned it a fair few times that you don't like going to Kirkcaldy, you don't like playing them there, and I think a fair few teams and fans would agree with you. I've never had too much of a problem with it, but I think it is certainly a tough place to go in general. And yes, I think it will be a really tough game for Arbroath to get the points, but I wouldn't say that Arbroath losing or not winning would be indicative of them starting to tumble. I think it's just one of those expected things. Arbroath aren't expected to be winning this league, so yes, they'll start to win, lose some games, draw some games, win some games, and that's just the way their season's going to be. I think the fact that they've started so brightly is probably giving them a wee bit of a boost and a jump at the moment. But yeah, I think the part-time aspect of it's going to start kicking in at some point, and I don't think it's quite yet, but tough game no doubt.
Yeah, definitely. I just fully agree with everything you said there. I think you summed it up absolutely perfectly. And that actually takes us on to our game, the first of Thistle's 2 games in hand. I'll let you take this off as the home team. What are you expecting? Obviously, we always say this when midweek game's still a game to come, so obviously makes it a wee bit more difficult to predict and talk about. But the real Glasgow derby, Cam, first one of the season. I'm just gutted I'm not going to be there.
Yeah, and it's your lot could have just had the game when it was supposed to be played, and wouldn't be having all this trouble now, and bloody midweek games instead of a nice Saturday game that I could have went to the day before holiday. But no, we've got all these international players. We need the game off. Oh, fucking scum. Sorry.
I would just love it if we don't play. I would just love it if we don't play any of these
As
players.
I said to you when you said it to me last time when you were trying to get me upset, was that if Partick don't play any of the 3 players that they got the game postponed for, I'm going to the F8 and I am kicking up stink like you've never stank before.
Oh, Matt Wilson, if you're listening to this, please don't play any of the 3 players and still beat Queen's Park, because that would be funny.
Oh, see, the thing is, if you don't play them and we win, then I don't care. It's your own fault.
I don't know. We win, obviously.
No.
No, but that's not what makes obviously, because then I'm pleased and it's funny. No, there's no funniness or pleasingness if you win.
Nah, it's pleasing to me. It's not funny, but it's pleasing.
I know.
Josh Fowler gets his first hat trick in a Queen's Park top. That'd be nice. Maybe we get the return to the Cam Ferry wonder saves that we've not really seen. He's been quiet, which is the thing, I suppose. But yeah, we've not seen so much from him. So, I'd like to say I'm looking forward to it, but I hate playing your lot.
We do have a good record against you, especially, and obviously you put us out the Scottish Cup when you went on to have your run against Rangers. But in the whole, we feel as though we've had kind of your number.
We won
in the league.
The first 2 since in our return to the championship, and then I think we've lost 80% of the other games and drawn a couple.
Yeah,
this is maybe roughly where it is, and it's pish, hate it.
So it will be interesting, and I'm gonna be interested as well, because obviously we spoke about it before. The away fan situation hasn't been a problem, but it'll be interesting Saturday and Tuesday to see how it all plays out. So one for the talking books maybe next week.
Yeah.
But Cam, I can't believe that's been about an hour. We've been chatting away here. I mean, it just flies in. I forget how quick an hour goes on the podcast when we're talking.
It does.
But we've still got one thing left to do.
We do.
And that is our famous prediction segment. As you explained to the listeners earlier on, we did keep a wee track ourselves of some predictions from the previous weeks. I don't know if you want to just give somebody the points rather than going through everything.
So based on the rule that we set at the start of the season, we've got 2 weeks that are still waiting on a result for. So I'm not going to touch those ones at all. We've got game week 5 and we've got game week 7 that we're waiting on a result. So when those games happen, one of them being the Tuesday game, we'll just have a look at our entire predictions for the whole thing. There's no point going into them just now. What we can do is we can look at game week 6, because all of the games of game week 6 happened. We've got predictions in for them, so we'll very briefly look at that, look at what the table looks like now before we get on to our predictions for the week. And it should all work out nicely. So game week 6, this was the one that started off with your lot against Airdrie on the Friday night on the TV. We both predicted a Partick Thistle victory. I had 3-0, you had 2-0. It was actually 2-1, so 2 points apiece. Arbroath against Dunfermline, neither of us had Dunfermline to win, never mind 5-0. You took them for a draw. I took an Arbroath victory. Next up, Ayr against Ross County. You took 2 each, so you get 2 points for that. I took 1 each. Ding, 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 ding. 5 points.
Nice.
1 each it was. Queen's Park against Martin. We both, for some reason, took Queen's Park to actually win that game. 2-1 for me, 1-0 for you. It was 0-0. Thankfully, that's the one I missed on holiday. And last up, we had Wraith Rovers against St Johnstone. You took Wraith Rovers to win this one 2-1. I did St Johnstone to win 3-2. It being 2-0 St Johnstone in the end, so 2 points for me. My tally there being 9 points, yours being just the 4.
Much stronger week for yourself there.
Tightens it back up. 1 point in it. 32 to you, 31 to me.
Interesting, kind of making things a wee bit more close here.
Obviously, I can also see all the games that have already been predicted as well.
And I can't remember as well, so that's my issue. I can just never remember.
The one thing I would say about those is they're very close as well. So
right.
I've managed to just very briefly, at the very least, bring that points back towards evens. So going into this week, it's very close.
Even Stevens, love it. So we've got the 5 games on Saturday.
And you're taking us off this week. The midweek game, yes, we do need to do that one too. But it's you to start us off. We'll get the midweek game after. We'll start off with Ayr against Airdrie.
Well, I'm just going to fly through these, Cam. I'm just going to tell you as it is. I'm going to go 2-1 Ayr.
Okay, and the one thing I'll say is, although you're going first, I did actually do all my predictions earlier, and I took 2-1 Ayr. Okay,
interesting. This is nice because you can't switch, obviously, if you've already done them. I like that. I think I said earlier it's going to be a close game there at Dunfermline for Thistle. So I'm going to go for a 1 each draw.
Okay, I took 2 each.
2 each, nice. So we're thinking similar lines here right from the start. Morton Ross County, I said it's a good draw, written all over it.
You did.
No.
I thought I took this one for a draw, but I've actually taken Morton 2-1.
Oh, big result there from Morton Heath and Wormley down County. I would
That's huge.
be interested to see if that does happen. Yeah. And then Queen's Park here against St Johnstone. How can you not say St Johnstone win based on everything else that's happened so far? I'll say 3-1 St Johnstone.
I said 3-1 St Johnstone.
Oh my God, we're thinking so similarly here.
Wraith Rovers against Arbroath, last game of the weekend fixtures.
I feel as though Wraith Rovers are going to come back to winning ways, and I do maybe think that Arbroath have had a good start, and this is maybe... I'm going to say a ridiculous scoreline here, Cam. Okay. I don't know why, it just came into my head. I'm going to say 5-1.
What? My goodness. I also took a Wraith Rovers victory, but just 2-0. To go over them there, Ayr against Airdrie, we both predicted 2-1 Ayr. Dunfermline against Thistle, we've both predicted a draw. Mine 2 each, yours 1 each. I've predicted Morton to win 2-1 against Ross County. You've predicted no goals. Queen's Park against St Johnstone, we've both went 3-1 St Johnstone, and we've both went for a Wraith Rovers victory. Me 2-0, you 5-1. Which is certainly possible. It took me by surprise. Now, last one up, we've got Queen's Park against Partick Thistle. I have not predicted this one yet because I forgot. So, give me yours first, and then I'll go based on that.
See, I feel as though sometimes you don't do this deliberately, right? You don't. I know you don't in any way, right? But sometimes you see things about games, right?
Yeah.
And it baits me in to giving a scoreline. And something you said there, right? I'm just gonna go ridiculous. I don't know what's wrong with me tonight, listeners. But you said there about how you would love to see Josh Fowler get his first hat trick for Queen's Park against Thistle.
Oh God!
Well, how about if
you're doing now then?
How about if I said that came in a 4-3 Thistle win?
It's crazy. We're never gonna have a 4-3 game. 7 goals. You think between us we can score 7 goals, and you think 3 of them are going to be from our side? My goodness. No, I'm gonna back the boys. Usually I wouldn't against Partick Thistle, and I had started to get to my learning my lesson this season where Queen's Park aren't going to win any games, but then we did win a game and it was against Ross County, and obviously it's unlikely we're going to win against St Johnstone, but I would like to think that we can maybe finally, seeing as we didn't lose against Ross County and bust their bad form, I'm hoping that maybe we can also bust Partick Thistle's good form against us. So I'm going to go 2-1 Queen's Park.
2-1 Queen's Park.
I'm going to do 2-1 Queen's Park.
I love how we've both backed our teams here, as you have to.
That's what it's about.
That's what it's about, exactly.
But especially when it's against Partick Thistle.
Oh, enough of the Thistle slagging for one week.
It's no slagging. We're rivals. They're our rivals.
They're our rivals.
So
that's the Jefferson High.
It's Jefferson High. So when that game happens on Tuesday, we'll have all the fixtures for game week 5 as well. So next week, when we come back, we'll be looking at game week 5, and we'll be looking at game week 8, which is happening this weekend, which actually lines up nicely with us being episode 8 of the podcast, which has now come to an end.
It has, and as ever, thank you very much, listeners, for sticking with us and the wee unplanned break that we had there. But hopefully coming up with us back in full swing week in, week out.
I don't see why not. Obviously, we reserve the right to put out a podcast whenever we desire, and if we don't have to if we don't want to. We do this because we enjoy it. So thank you very much, everyone who watched it and did enjoy it. You're the reason that we do it. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you all again next week.
See you next week. Enjoy whatever game you're at, listeners, and have a belter. Bye bye.